One of our partner organizations, Raise Your Hand Texas, recently conducted a survey. You might want to take a look at those headlines where 50% of every new teacher that we're hiring, 50% of them are leaving after the first year. That's an alarming number. That really puts us in a place where we're not going to be able to keep up with the number of people that are eligible to retire right now. Study after study after study has shown that that students are not entering teacher preparation programs. They're choosing to look elsewhere for that type of work. Those that are currently working are looking at activities. They're looking for anything. Let me just be honest about that. As a matter of fact, I had a colleague of mine that works with the UIL, the Scholastic League. They're posting for office positions, and they've never. The comment was they've never had more teachers applying for what amounts to an administrative assistant position in the past. You have some of our teachers that have invested quite a bit of time and energy in getting degrees in math and science that are able to go into other fields and double their salary. They're often in the Houston area when there's an opening at any of the plants or refineries, are able to move and leave to double that salary very easily. But oftentimes, they're leaving not just because of the salary. It is because of the respect issue. It is because of the fact that our state has created such a crisis with how they are telling people how to teach, with the lack of support, with the demeaning attitude, that people don't want to feel like they're completely and solely responsible for everything that's wrong with public education. And that's a huge driver here. As far as what we'll be doing, the very first thing that we're going to be doing, as I spoke to earlier, is we'll take the rest of the spring and the summer holding listening sessions across the state with stakeholders, with parents, with teachers and others, to really ask them to do what the state hasn't done. And that's actually listen to them. Listen to what teachers actually say will help them stay in the classroom. Listen to what bus drivers actually need to actually continue working in their job. Listening to parents. Parents that are our partners, make no mistake about that. They are our partners in education, and finding out what is most important to them so that we can build that into our day-to-day work. Those are some of the things that we will be doing this summer to get ready for the session. It's an absolute shame that the state of Texas, which I believe is the somewhere around the 9th or 10th largest economy in the world, can't even find its way to the average teacher salary in the United States. And that's one of the things that we'll be pushing on. If we can't at least be average in Texas, then we are not setting the bar high enough. Once we're consistently staying in the yellow zone, that's part of the issue with this, is different states are experiencing different levels of the viral load. And once we're consistently in the yellow zone, I think that's a time that we can start looking at it. Certainly, I would want to, again, talk to the county health officials, people like Dr. Hodis, to get best practice advice on when it's safe to really bring down the mask mandates. Clearly, at the height of this Omicron variant rolling around was not the time to stop that mask mandate. But hopefully, once we start lowering our overall loads, we can get to that yellow zone, then we should be able to lift that mandate and try to move on to something, at least the new normal. Well, I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing scenario. I think that we should be building better practices, making sure that there are opportunities. Like one of the things that we talked about with school districts the other day, why did we stop using our outside spaces for lunch? so that students had more room, so that they had more time where they could be, if they have had their vaccines, they could be unmasked in an outside area. How do we incorporate more of those opportunities into a school day so that we can get as close to normal as absolutely possible? Again, I will, like, the numbers speak for themselves. The number of teachers and staff that we had out because they themselves were COVID positive over the last month. Imagine if we didn't have mask mandates in HISD and some of these other districts. I believe those numbers would be much higher because we certainly saw how the lack of mask mandates exacerbated that issue in those other school districts. You know, I would like a lot. I would like to be back to normal as well too. But I'm out at a conference today, and I'm walking through the streets of the city where I see people masked all the time. It may be that it is part of our new normal to have some level of precautionary measures as we go through this. I think that you know, when you move through, and that's why it's almost goes back to Nick's question. This is not a static pandemic. It's dynamic. It's consistently moving with new variants and new pieces coming through, and we've got to have dynamic solutions. And we've got to be ready that there are going to be these changes in attitudes. I think everybody's had them. It's not just our educators. People were starting to feel safer. They were starting to feel like that we'd gotten a large bit of this behind us when everybody started getting vaccinated. Or I shouldn't say everybody, because we still have quite a few holdouts, but more people started getting vaccinated. And then we had a much more contagious, though on the whole, less dangerous in some ways variant come through that brought all of this back to people, brought everything back that we've been dealing with for the last 2 years. You know, on top of the constant discussion about lifting the very few safety measures that we have in place. So I think that it's reasonable that people would have some shifting concerns as we go through these peaks and valleys of responding to this crisis. I do think that there is a path. It means involving. It means those that are really the solid majority out there have to get engaged and they have to be involved. That's 78% of the parents that we're talking about that know and understand that we're in this together and trying to figure this out, coming to the table, supporting each other, us supporting the parents for what they're doing to try to help their kids through this, them supporting us in the education system, and working and talking together to make that happen. We're all exhausted. We all have multiple things that we're trying to balance as we go through this. But remembering, and it might sound a bit corny, we're only going to get through this when we work together. And I think that's the overriding message that we want to make sure that comes out. You know, it's going to be a tough path. There's no doubt about that. But you know, we have support from both sides of the political spectrum that really want to see public schools be successful. And those are the individuals that we need to help and support and listen to move forward. I do think that the retention bonuses are helpful. You know, so many of our educators and school staff have frankly taken out of their pocket to try to do what needed to be done to mitigate in the earlier stages of the pandemic, before there was funds and supports and additional things to make these things happen. So some of those retention stipends are almost really focused on kind of bringing people whole through this pandemic. Teachers pull out of their pocket for their students in their classrooms at very high rates every year in a normal year. And they've done more so during the pandemic. So we're definitely in support of those. But yes, your point is well taken. These are temporary. These are one-time funds. If we don't come up with a better systemic resolution at the state level and stop pitting public schools against property taxpayers, then we're not going to come to a good resolution. We've got to really put all solutions on the table. People don't like to talk about them. They don't like to talk about state income taxes. They don't like to talk about other income opportunities that make a difference. But in many ways, this is the way our country was built, is everybody doing a little bit to do their share to make sure that our public services and public spaces are what we all want them to be and meet all of our expectations. As far as the listening tours, we'll be inviting those trustees, we'll be inviting those administrators. I can't guarantee that they will show up, but we are open. We've done this before in the past, about maybe a little over a decade, and we did have good participation. We hope to again. We'll invite people that don't necessarily agree with us, because we want to make sure that everybody truly is listened to and heard. We want to emulate what we expect out of our state government. And once you're elected to office, whether you're blue, whether you're red, you represent everyone, and you need to listen to everyone. We may not necessarily always agree, and everybody is not going to be happy with the full solutions that we come to, but everybody needs to have a seat at the table to share what their perspectives are, because that's how we get to the best policy. We have plenty of instances of teachers living in New Mexico and currently working in Texas. It's not just our Texas teachers that would likely be leaving if this passed, but you'll probably see a lot of New Mexico teachers going home, exacerbating that issue on our side of the state line. This is something that we definitely need to look at. I think that they have a good plan that could be something that we look at putting in place in Texas. We'll see how that goes. I will be very curious, and we will certainly be following the staffing patterns that come out of the greater West Texas, El Paso area as this moves through. This latest book banning witch hunt episode that the state has gone on when it comes to curricular issues, when it comes to actually teaching about real life, is a shame, and it's frankly is a detriment. It's a detriment to all students. Let's be real. That things are not perfect. They never have been. They probably never will be. But we don't get better without first realizing and recognizing where things are and how others see things. If we're not spending the time to make sure that we understand each other, then we're not going to be in a better place. I think that we will consistently be fighting for those teachers, fighting with those teachers that frankly, many of them are in fear now. Are they able to deliver this lesson? That they have delivered for many years that may spark controversy or be something that students really have to think about. I mean, heck, it's putting it's putting a bad spotlight on things that shouldn't even be controversial. My goodness, we had some parent turn in a biography book on Michelle Obama because she thought it was going to make other students feel bad. Really? Are we that fragile? I mean, these are the same people that are calling people snowflakes, that are making these outlandish allegations. I think that we've gone in the wrong direction in Texas and so many of these other states that are coming up with these pieces. Yes, parents need to understand and be part of that process, know what's going on. Is it to the point where parents should see a year's worth of lesson plans that we've seen coming up in other states? No, that's ridiculous. Frankly, that's a malpractice. Teachers cannot put together a year's worth of lesson plans so that they can be scrutinized and reviewed in such a way, because that's not how classrooms work. You take the first month to actually get to know your students and identify where they are so that you can craft your lessons based on their needs. So clearly we have more people that don't understand how education works, attempting to create laws and policies for problems that have been that are frankly being made up or taken out of context. We will continue to fight for those teachers. We will continue to push back against these restrictive laws. As a matter of fact, we've made a commitment that if any of our teachers are sanctioned for teaching the truth, we will do everything we can to push and support that back including representing them in court. I don't think it's per se go back to virtual learning, but I do believe it should be something that is not blatantly taken off the table. If we look at the month of January, for instance, could we have drastically reduced the number of COVID cases that were going through our schools and the number of staff that were out, exacerbating the staff shortage? Had we spent a week, gone back to virtual for a week and reintroduced people back in after 2 weeks of holidays where they were probably mingling with a lot of other people, that's parents, students, teachers, everybody, like that's what we do. Would it have been smarter? Would it have been less disruptive to the educational process? Well, possibly. We have some school districts that we'll be taking a closer look at that actually did that. They took some time to go back virtual for several days to try to break this cycle. Does that mean that we want to go back completely? Absolutely not. I think that most teachers prefer to be in person. It is underestimated the struggle that it was to try to teach both in person and virtually at the same time. And it is an underestimation of the amount of time it took for teachers to have to try to adapt to a virtual environment. Frankly, that probably is one of the reasons that we're seeing the staff burnout with the amount of overwork that they're in right now. So that is not optimal, but it shouldn't be something that is absolutely not considered if there are circumstances that looking at the long game, looking down the road might help us avoid what we saw in the month of January.